I wanted to mention a quick note. Some of you have been likely following what's going on America's college campuses. This, what you call outburst by the young people who are trying to take over and run things, is anarchist, really. I think that's the word I'm looking for. In a Lord of the Flies manner is growing out of hand. In fact, Daily Signal said today it's spreading to other campuses across the country. So there's going to be trouble coming. And unfortunately, the folks who run those campuses really put themselves into this situation on their own. Before we talk a little bit more about that, I'd like to remind you, hearing this show is critical. If you'd like to keep up with daily events and the assault on our culture, and of course you can do that. That is, listen to the show if you get your hearing checked periodically and make sure that it is sound. And we've been recommending a doctor of audiology named Christine Pickup. She's located in Rupert, Mount Harrison Audiology. You can find them at mountharrisonaudiology.com or telephone 208-312-0957. She's located at 1218 9th Street, Unit number 2. Did you know that the health of the inner ear is affected by your cardiovascular and kidney health? The inner ear is very sensitive to changes in your blood supply. If you've had recent heart problems or kidney problems, you should have your hearing checked right away. There is a stack of material I came across today on what's going on these college campuses. University of Missouri, Yale, Ithaca College has been added to the list. And just one after another, these students are saying that we have to recognize that white privilege is a sinister thing, and the universities better shape up. Of course, they all say that we need to have freedoms and liberties and protect them. At Yale University, a writer by the name, I think it was Kevin Williamson, was one of the writers from National Review, ended up traveling to Yale last week because William F. Buckley was a graduate, and they do a yearly event there where they have a discussion about free speech sponsored by a center that William F. Buckley ended up funding. And he said when they got there and they were trying to speak, he said all of these student demonstrators were shouting them down. So much for freedom of speech, right? But from the students' viewpoint, their speech is important, yours isn't. And, of course, you're privileged, so therefore we can't listen to that. You've got to shut up and just let them run the country right now. And the way they've been running things on the quad out there at the University of Missouri, you get the impression it will be anarchy. It'll just be savagery before it's all done. I mean, people are going to be, the way they were treating reporters, roughing them up the other day, they were claiming this is our safe space, and then they roughed up the reporters. So much for being safe. 926. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. By the way, as a public university, the writer at the Daily Caller says today, the University of Missouri is bound by the First Amendment. Now, my guess is you're going to have a lot of private universities. You don't sign away your rights when you go to a private university. But U of M, it has gone forward, and what they're doing now is they're instructing the students. Let me read a little bit of this. The college's police department has sent a new email to students advising them to call the police if they witness any incidents of, quote, hurtful speech, unquote. I don't like your looks. All right, you've got to go to jail. The email arrived in the inboxes of Missouri students Tuesday morning, and copies of it were publicly posted on Twitter. Now, the police are saying it's not necessarily a crime, but if someone says something and it hurts your feelings, you're supposed to report who they were, along with a complete license plate number if they were driving, photograph if you get a chance to take that with your phone, and any other details that you can provide. So the school, it says, could still take disciplinary action against someone. Hey, fatty, if you say that to someone on campus now, you could be apparently expelled. Or that's at least what they're saying. Or if you say, I don't believe in what you're doing, that could be considered hurtful, right? Perhaps that could lead to your expulsion. At The Atlantic, which is, I said in the last couple of weeks, I've quoted The Atlantic. It is not a magazine I would call ultra-liberal. I think it leans left. Used to be somewhat of a more balanced magazine, but the former editor who had that balance that he installed there, he was killed during the war in Iraq, which is a shame, because over the last dozen years, this thing has not been quite the same magazine it was. Listen to this, though. A writer says student activists did not want their tent city or the people in it photographed, and prevented, of course, a photographer who was working on assignment from ESPN from taking pictures. His name was Tim Tye. And one of the people who prevented him from doing it, it said, it's typically white media who don't understand the importance of respecting black spaces. Now, I guess Asians, they look like the rest of us when it comes to paler skin, I suppose, but in some cases, they would be considered minorities as well. The writer says, I see the most vivid example yet of activists twisting the concept of safe space in a most confounding way. They have one lone student surrounded. They're forcibly preventing him from exercising a civil right. At various points, they intimidate him. Ultimately, they physically push him, but all the while they are operating on the premise or carrying on the premise, he is making them unsafe. And the writer says at Yale, where you've got students who are angry with professors because the professor said they shouldn't get all bent out of shape about offensive Halloween costumes, he said they now have said that they're going to spit on people if they disagree with their speech. So much for a safe space. The writer pretty much outlines it. These kids are out of control, and they've been raised by a bunch of people who tells them that don't worry, we'll always make sure people don't hurt your feelings, or if they do, we'll punish them severely. The communications professor who actually helped rough up this photographer in Missouri has tendered a resignation, but it says only to her courtesy appointment. So she was on loan to the Department of Journalism. She may still be on campus. It says she's gotten a lot of vicious emails since then. Her name is Dr. Melissa Click. And it just goes on and on and on. Here's another one, Ithaca College, where the students are complaining that people have said hurtful things, and after 7 years on the job, they want the college president to resign. They're having a no-confidence vote, as if somehow they have a say in it. I was a bit of a rabble-rouser when I was in college. I admit that. But you know something? My main goal was to go to class and earn a degree, graduate, and find a job. It wasn't to be constantly disruptive. 9:30, Bill Colley with you. Speaking of that, I'm going to share an audio piece with you in the upcoming segment about all of this. It's hilarious, but you've got to take a listen to it. It's also a warning, too, as well. If there is any indication that Western culture is finally circling the drain, it is what's going on with these college campuses. And it's not just in the United States. I said Western culture. It's taking place in Europe as well. Came across a video while I was getting the show ready this morning. It was about 7 minutes long. I'm not going to share all of it because you can't see it, obviously. And it's a little lengthy for most of my show segments, but I clipped it down to about 4 minutes and 20 seconds. It's about a student who wanders into a class in England, and he's could be a college classroom, or it could be a high school classroom. He's there with 3 other students. He appears to be the brightest student in the room. And yet, well, listen to the political correctness that takes place here. I'll tell you a little bit more about it afterwards. The visuals are funny, too, as well. But this is from a video called Modern Education. Education is not spelled, by the way, the traditional way. It's spelled as if someone is having some difficulty trying to come up with words on a piece of paper.
Our first question, 1 + 1. Yes.
2.
Incorrect. Yes.
Multiculturalism.
Well done, Simon. Next question. What is 3 × 3? Yes?
9.
Wrong. Yes, Penelope.
Gender equality.
Very good, Penelope.
Is this a joke?
You think gender equality is a joke?
No, but isn't this a maths class?
Don't be so racist.
I just asked a question.
We don't ask questions. Questions are offensive.
Yeah!
Now, students, I trust you've all completed your research assignments. And remember, the person with the highest mark will be flying to New York to present their paper at the World Mathematics Summit. Well done, Penelope. 6 out of 10. You too, Simon. 6 out of 10.
Hey, be careful. You've been staring at her for 10 seconds.
What?
It's a form of harassment to stare at a woman for more than 15 seconds straight. And when I use the term straight, I don't mean to offend any persons of a non-traditional sexual preference. And when I use the term non-traditional, I don't mean to offend any persons who oppose historically normalized...
Okay, I get it.
Unfortunately, Sunshine, your research assignment is only worth a 1 out of 10.
I've used Fourier transform and mathematical methods in electronics to analyze the electrodiagrams of at-risk patients and calculate their risk of experiencing a heart attack. I mean, it's a new method, but it could potentially save thousands of lives.
7.
You barely even read it.
You used red pen.
What?
Red is considered offensive in many religions.
Why would you belittle everything down to a singular colour? Well, humanity is a rainbow of beauty and spirituality.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, 7 out of 10, but that still means I get to go to the summit, right?
The marking process isn't over yet. Now, because we live in a society based on equality, the total amount of marks are to be divided equally among our students.
You've got to be kidding me.
Well done, students. We're all equal. We're all average.
Yay!
But then who gets to go to the summit?
Oh, we haven't added our privilege points yet. Don't you know anything?
That is correct. Now, Penelope, you are female, so that's +1 privilege point. However, you are white, so that's -1.
I'm also bisexual.
+1. That leaves you with a total score of 6 out of 10. Simon, unfortunately, you're straight, white, and male.
And cisgendered.
Yes, so that's -4 privilege points, which leaves you with a total score of 1.
It's only fair.
Now you're male, and I don't like you. So that's -2 privilege points, but you are brown and sexually ambiguous. So that's +2. That leaves you with a total score of 5.
Wait, why am I sexually ambiguous?
And finally, Sunshine.
I'm gay, I'm trans, I'm Asian, I'm overweight, I'm lower class, I'm unintelligent, unattractive, I've got hairs on my nipples, and I also got body odor, and I can't really run properly or tie my shoelaces by myself. And I once watched a pigeon die.
Wonderful, Sunshine. That's 13 privilege points. That leaves you with a total score of 18 out of 10. Well done, Sunshine. You're going to New York.
Hooray, sunshine!
We knew you could do it!
Let me see this. They've just written equality and drawn love hearts on a piece of paper.
He expressed himself, and it's beautiful.
So this video continues, and if you could sit through all of that, I thank you. But I was watching this, and the one student who's the obvious genius of the class objects to the fact that the idiot is getting the trip. And of course, the genius has explained he could save thousands of people's lives with a new heart procedure. And with that, they tell him that he's being very offensive and that they're going to attack him and likely kill him and that he has no right to fight back because, well, he's already offended them. So you see him being attacked, and you see a woman walking down the hallway outside the classroom, and she hears a scream. And she walks into the classroom, and there's one empty seat. And they tell her she can sit down, and as she's walking forward, there's a box in the middle of the room, and suddenly something that's locked in the box shakes. And the teacher says, "Pay no attention to that." That is the future, and this is what we're seeing happening on our own college campuses. This is not going to end well, folks. If this gets out of hand and gets into the wider culture, which, well, let's be honest, it has, we are headed towards civil war in this country. And we're going to be dealing with something on the level of the French Revolution as all of the liberals, socialists, anarchists, and communists try to kill anybody out there who is, well, normal by a traditional definition. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. 39, 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Hey, I've got more coming up, including a sad tale about Veterans Day coming out of Seattle, Washington, at a college, wouldn't you know? Some of you may be familiar with a place called Seattle Pacific University. Obviously, it's a good drive from here, most of a day's drive, but still familiar in the Northwest. Saw a story on Fox 13 out of Seattle last night, and it appears that there will be a limited Veterans Day ceremony at the university today. I'll tell you about that in just a minute, and I'll tell you why. 9:44. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Do want to remind you about our friends over at Tint Lady. I've been telling you about them for months on the air, and I've been telling you in the hot weather they can put window tints in your home, your business, or your automobile, and that can help reduce the intense heat that sometimes comes from the rays of the sun. This time of year, that may not be your primary concern. On the other hand, those rays, some of those are ultraviolet, and they're a bleaching agent. They'll take the color out of your fabrics. They'll take the color out of many of your photographs you may have hanging on walls, portraits and the like. paintings. Very valuable things sometimes to people, at least when it comes to what is special to them in life, even if sometimes there's not a lot of money wrapped up in all of these things. You can get a free estimate if you give the folks at Tint Lady a call. The telephone number is 736-8469, or find them online, tintladyidaho.com. They've been in business now over 20 years over at 1887 Highland Avenue East in Twin Falls. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday by appointment only, and closed on Sundays. And remember, don't squint. Get tint. Seattle Pacific University. This is what I think I'll get to the phones in just a minute. I think I can make out of the story that's coming out of Seattle Pacific. Group of students were getting together and they were going to have a Veterans Day remembrance at a church, which is apparently located on the campus. They were told that there would be no American flags and no Pledge of Allegiance in the church. When asked why, or they asked why, they were told, somebody said, well, people have complained. They don't think church is appropriate for the American flag or for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, my sister is a member of something called the American Baptist Church. When I have visited her church, they always have off to one side, it's not on the altar, but it's off to one side, they have an American flag hanging there. American Baptist Church. Many churches have American flags. They may not be as prominent, obviously, as some of the other, the iconography or other things that they have in their churches. But it seems to me that this is a Veterans Day ceremony. What would you expect? Flags and a Pledge of Allegiance. And yet the students are being told, nope, can't do it. Somebody out there complained. They don't know who complained. They're just told somebody complained. 946 and 40. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I have a caller. And caller, you're on the air.
Yes, Bill, you were talking about, how far down the road we've gotten with that little clip. And, I think people forget this, and it bears repeating. Hillary Clinton will probably be the nominee for the Democratic Party. She will already have 240 electoral votes right out of the gate. 240. Now, unless I'm mistaken, they only need is 270. We have got to... And we start out with around 100 and some. I don't remember exactly where these figures are. But you see, this is how close they are to running the show permanently. And see, these types of things you forget, but you just want people to understand how precarious this thing could be.
It is... a time in this country's history where maybe most people aren't thinking about it. Most people are obviously uneasy because they know the economy has not fully recovered, and it may never fully recover. They're uneasy about all of those things. If they haven't been watching what's going on these campuses, though, and this is the canary of the coal mine from what I can see, and last night at the debate, a group of Black Lives Matter protesters tried to burn the American flag. Milwaukee police rescued it. This is what we're dealing with. We are at the cusp. Things were supposed to get better under the current regime, and we were told that race relations would improve, but frankly, they haven't. And that seems to be what's driving most of the trouble on campuses and obviously in politics, too, as well.
You know something? If you were to raise your child and hardly ever say a word to them, they would sense how you were, your countenance, and what you did, and they would become who they are. You see, we can tell by looking at what this president does, and how he is, without saying a word, that he is, I don't know how to describe him because the words I can't use on the air. It's just, it's so repulsive that, and scary. It's just a hell of a place, ain't it? I'll hang up.
Sure is. Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. I just there have to be a great many Americans who are just absolutely depressed by the direction that we're going, and the things that are being defined as being normal. I had a liberal tell me one time, "Well, Bill, define normal." I know what it is when I see it. I'm paraphrasing an old line from a Supreme Court justice when he was asked about how he would define pornography. I know it when I see it. And I sure as heck know abnormal when I come across that. There was a disgusting story the other day about the gay couple, gay men. They have a 6-year-old daughter, probably adopted. They now say that the daughter identifies as a man, and the school district is going to allow them to, well, it gets no prettier. Meanwhile, Mike Gallagher, brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls, 736-6563. That's 736-6563.